All right. Welcome back, friends. The Litany of Saint Joseph. The Litany of Saint Joseph beautifully captures the many virtues and title of this great saint. Each invocation invites reflection on a different aspect of his role: spouse, guardian, protector, worker, model of patience and strength. Reciting the litany deepens one's devotion to Saint Joseph and fosters a greater appreciation for the virtues necessary for fatherhood. It is not a mere listing of titles, but a powerful spiritual exercise that draws the heart closer to one of God's greatest saints. It encourages all fathers to see in St. Joseph a mirror for their own vocation.
Right. Yeah, the Litany of Saint Joseph. You think, one of the greatest saints. You try and think of who might be ahead of him, right? I mean, obviously the Blessed Mother, but um, in terms of just immediately ascending to the will of God, he and Saint John the Baptist really have to be kind of those two premier saints, both in their own way, men of action and
Mm.
men of very, very few words, right? Very, very similar men, but and almost like the bookends of one another, right? One called into the life of the family, one called into the life of service to the church, right? To spreading that gospel. But this litany with Saint Joseph is really an engagement with the really the almost the beatitudes of fatherhood, right? What is the best, what is the pinnacle, what is the highest
Mhm.
that man in his role as father, what is it that he is called to strive to achieve? And I think that by points of meditation, for a man, it would be good to think, well, what is it that I can be? And for the points of us as women who are married to them, and then the mother of their children is, what can I do to assist my husband to achieve these things? Right? Well,
Yeah,
how am I not a hindrance to his ability to engage with the life around him in this type of virtue? Don't let me be a stumbling block.
that's right. And that's right. And just when I was in my moment of reflection and drafting this, the titles that, of course, came to me would be those that I would see reflected in my own husband.
Right.
That doesn't mean if I sat down and, you know, had another opportunity, I would come up perhaps with a little different ones. So, so in this moment, these were the ones that came to me. Most chaste. Joseph's chastity was not a mere abstention from sin, but it was a radical self gift. His pure heart allowed him to love Mary and Jesus with a singular devotion, free from selfishness. Spouse of the Mother of God. Joseph's role as Mary's spouse signifies a profound trust from God. He was entrusted with the care and protection of the Theotokos, the Mother of God herself. Chaste guardian of the Virgin. Joseph's guardianship of Mary was rooted in reverence and awe for the divine mystery she bore. His role was not domination, but loving custodianship. Foster father of the Son of God. Though not the biological father of Jesus, Joseph embraced the child as his own. He teaches that fatherhood is ultimately about love and responsibility, not mere biology and terror of demons. This striking title reminds us of the spiritual authority granted to Joseph. His purity and
Can I
righteousness
just
made
add
him.
one little thing there? I just want to. I was thinking as you were talking about that element of the foster father of the Son of God. Uh, it's so reminiscent. That particular term is so reminiscent back to that scripture where there's the period where we say Joseph at this point now has gone on to his heavenly reward, but Mary and Jesus's cousins, right? Your brothers and sisters are outside, and Jesus asks that fundamental question, which people who don't love the Blessed Mother always want to kind of beat her over the head with this one. But
That's true.
who are my mother and father? Right? He who does the will of, I mean, who is my mother, father, brother, and sister to me? The one who does the will of God. And so in that, you see both Christ honoring both his mother and his father perfectly, right? His father, Joseph, because Joseph was father to him. But why was he father to him? Because he did perfectly the will of God.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
Right. That just struck me there when you were saying that.
No, that was no perfect, perfect. So we're back to Terror of Demons. And yeah, let's see. Yeah, we might say something about that. This striking title reminds us of the spiritual authority granted to Joseph. His purity and righteousness made him a formidable adversary against the forces of evil. Fathers are called to imitate this spiritual warfare, protecting their families against both physical and spiritual dangers. Cannot a holy father see the dangers to his family? He's added, if you will, an attention or an awareness, and he can see the dangers. And just something very trivial. This is very trivial. Keep it very trivial. Our air conditioner upstairs was seeming to be off, and Ted noticed it right off. Called the our techs, had them come out. I asked our daughter here, did you notice anything? No, I don't notice it. Well, but Ted did. And that's just that sort of the being aware, the protection. It turns out we just needed some cleaning, no Freon, just regular maintenance. Okay, great. Regular maintenance is cheaper than having to
That's
do some other things, as we all
yeah,
know.
very true. Yeah, yeah, that is very
And
true.
that's or the father who has teenage daughters, and he knows more than the mother how certain fashions can arouse uh, thoughts or minds or
Passions,
behavior.
absolutely. Mhm.
And, he can say something or not, but we're modeling St. Joseph. He can say something in a way that the mother of a teenage daughter really can't say without potential backlash because of the age and that sort of thing. But a father has a little bit more leeway. Doesn't mean, with tact and love and all those other things. But he has a way of speaking into situations in those trying years that a mother oftentimes is challenged with.
Yeah. That going with your story before, I was thinking that we had a similar situation at our house too, where I was making sure that the kids were in bed. So Greg went downstairs to double check, make sure that everybody was up from the basement, and he opened the door, called down there, and then he thought, "What is that sound?" And he went downstairs, and one of our pipes from our upstairs, from our kitchen sink, was dripping. This one little drip. But I mean, who knows overnight what would have happened, right? So like, I'm wondering, like, where is my husband? Like, you literally were just going downstairs to check on the kids, and suddenly he's gone for like 10, 15 minutes. And I went downstairs, and you're like, oh, I just heard this drip. I thought, wow, like I would have turned on the light, not heard anything, and then, I wouldn't have even dawned on me that there would have been something amiss. But you're right, there is an element. I think that there's a grace that is given to them for the purpose of helping them to protect their family. Whatever, even small
Oh,
or big things.
oh,
It
I
doesn't
agree.
matter.
It was that was this for my first sentence. It was a spiritual authority granted to Joseph. They do have a spiritual authority granted to them. And thanks be to God that that is so. All right.
Yes.
Let us pick up in the next set of episodes, friends, sacred scripture. as always, we're interested to see what that has to say. Till then, feed us, Abbraccio.